Hello students, welcome back in English class. Today we are going to read out one of the interesting poem from our book When I Set Out for Lyonesse. This poem is written by Thomas Hardy. Let me give you a brief about this interesting poem. As a young apprentice, architect, the British poet and the novelist Thomas Hardy once visited a parish to supervise the restoration of a church. The meaning of parish here, a small administrative district typically having its own church and a priest. So once Thomas Hardy, when he was a young apprentice architect, he visited a parish to supervise the restoration of a church, or we can say the renovation of a church was going on, and he visited there to supervise. On his return from the parish, people noticed two things about him: a new glow in his eyes and a crumpled piece of paper sticking out of his coat pocket. That paper, it is recorded in one of his biographies, contained the draft of a poem, When I Set Out for Lyonesse. This poem was inspired by a visit to a place which the poet calls Lyonesse. Lyonesse is a mythical place. It's not real, it's a fictional place, referred to in the legend of King Arthur. The poet's choice to use this setting refers to an actual place that imparts an air of magic and mysticism. Let's find out, first of all, a little bit about this poet Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was born in England on 2nd June 1840. When he was 22, Hardy left for London, where he was influenced by the works of Charles Swinburne, Robert Browning, and Charles Darwin. Hardy tried his hand at writing when he was 17. His first novel, manuscript The Poor Man and the Lady, was rejected by several publishers. A second story, Desperate Remedies, was accepted and published. Hardy wrote short stories, poems, and plays for the rest of his life. He was quite prolific during this period, writing some 900 poems on a variety of subjects. This poem, When I Set Out for Lyonesse, is known as the best poem and the most graceful of Thomas Hardy's poems. This poem recalls his first visit as a young architect to the St. Juliet Rectory and the church in an isolated part of the Cornwall. There he met his wife-to-be Emma Lavinia Gifford. The meeting transformed his life, and apparently he carried back with him to higher Backhampton a feeling of having been changed in some magical way. The poem creates a fairy tale atmosphere through several devices. Indeed, it contains a specific reference to a fairy tale or legend in Hardy's choice of his place name, Lyonesse, the spelling of which is taken from Swinburne's Tristram of Lyonesse, and which calls to mind Cornwall's associations not only with Tristan and Iseult but with King Arthur and the Knights of Round Table. But a more specific influence may account in part of the fairy tale elements When I Set Out for Lyonesse. As often noted, Hardy grew up in an oral tradition of stories, songs, and doggerel and nursery rhymes passed down from one generation to the next. A possible source of When I Set Out for Lyonesse, probably heard in one form or another by Hardy as a child, is the nursery rhymes How Many Miles to Babylon. The Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes lists several variants from the 19th century. It offers no date of origin, but remarks that the words were used formerly for a singing game and traces the place. A happy ending marks Hardy's chief departure from the haunting nursery rhyme, which consciously or unconsciously very likely inspired him in the writing in of one of his best known poems. Let's read and discuss the meaning of this poem. The first stanza we have: when I set out for Lyonesse, 100 miles away, the rhyme was on the spray, and starlight lit my lonesomeness. When I set out for Lyonesse, 100 miles away. In this stanza, we see that the poet set out for Lyonesse, which was situated 100 miles away from his house. It was winter time, and the weather was cold and chilled. The shine in the night sky helped him when he was lonely. He had no idea what would happen during his stay at Lyonesse. The meaning of rhyme here is frost formed on cold objects by the rapid freezing of water vapor in a cloud or fog, and the meaning of spray means the branches and the leaves of a tree. So the line "the rhyme was on the spray" means the fog was on the leaves and the branches of the tree. Then next stanza we have: what would be chance at Lyonesse while I should sojourn there? No prophet durst declare, nor did the wisest wizard guess. What would be chance at Lyonesse while I should sojourn there? In this stanza number 2, the poet expresses his unsurety about what would happen at Lyonesse. He says that he doesn't know what awaits him at Lyonesse. And the poet says that even a prophet or a wisest wizard would fail to predict the experience accurately and vividly. So the meaning of sojourn means a temporary stay, and the meaning of be chance with to happen or find by any chance. Lonesomeness means a state of feeling. Now the third stanza we have: when I returned from Lyonesse with magic in my eyes, all marked with mute surmise, my radiance rare and fathomless. When I returned from Lyonesse with magic in my eyes. In this stanza, the poet describes what happened on his return. On his return from the parish, people noticed two things about him: a new rare glow in his eyes and a crumpled piece of paper sticking out of his coat pocket. So the meaning of surmise here is suppose that something is true without having evidence to confirm it. Means you knew that something is there, that something is true, but you don't have any proof. Radiance means the light or heat as emitted or reflected by something, and the meaning of fathomless means something unable to measure or understand. You can't measure a thing. So in this paragraph, in this stanza, the poet highlighted that when he returned from his journey, people noticed two things about him: that there was a rarest kind of radiance and glow was in his eyes, and crumpled piece of paper was sticking out of his coat pocket. Let's discuss the meaning of this poem again, as we have read the whole poem. So in the poem, the poet Thomas Hardy tries to put us in an awesome wonder by writing with ease on a simple theme: a journey to Lyonesse, which is the mythical birthplace of Sir Tristram in England. It is believed that this place is now submerged in the sea. In the poem, it is used as an imaginary place. The poet once visited a parish to supervise the restoration of a church. The poem is suggestive of the spiritual benefit of visiting some places. The poet set out for Lyonesse, which was situated 100 miles away from his house, The starlight lit his lonesomeness. He was lonely, but the starlight lit his whole way. He had no idea what would happen during his stay at Lyonesse, and he was going to stay there for few days. Nevertheless, the poet was sure that when he returned there was a magic in his eyes. Everybody noticed that magic. He also had the radiance which is rare and fathomless. Some places welcome us with a mute surmise. Visit to such places are really rewarding and illuminating. The poet sets forth a mythical land, Lyonesse, in a state of lonesomeness. Therefore, something unexpected or undisclosed occurs, and the poet returns with the magic in his eyes. So, the poem, written by Thomas Hardy, is the memory of these 3 days in his life. Although nothing is mentioned in the poem about any of this, it is obvious that the poet is quite excited and happy about his trip. This place, Lyonesse, is a mythical lost land, and beginning with these lines, the poet appears to be a reader on a trip. We, the reader, learns through this poem that the trip will cover about 100 miles by train. Initially, the poetic speaker was lonely, probably dreading his time away from home and his comforts. On the other hand, no fortune teller or magician could have foretold what would happen while he was there. The speaker can hardly believe what occurred himself. Never telling what did transpire, the reader is we are fully aware that this was a grand event in the poet's life. However, he does not explain himself. Not that Lyonesse is mentioned twice in every stanza. This promotes the idea of the time he spent on this trip was more than real, possibly heavenly. So when we are reading Thomas Hardy's poem, it is always helpful to find out what is happening in his personal life. When the poem was written, many of Hardy's poems recall some events in his life. Often, it specifically refers to his relationship. This poem, When I Set Out for Lyonesse, refers to an actual occurrence which changed Hardy's life forever. Here, Thomas Hardy narrates the poem using the repetition of the word Lyonesse several times. This is called anaphora. He wrote this poem with 3 stanzas which represent the before the trip, during the time there, and the journey home. Oddly, Lyonesse is a mythical place referred to in the King Arthur legend. His choice to use this setting rather than an actual place imparts an air of magic and mysticism. This place turns out to be a place of joy and happiness. So, written in 1869, this poem actually refers to a church near Cornwall where Hardy went to make recommendations about its repair. This trip was a life-altering journey for him. From his biographical information, Hardy was met at the door by the sister of the priest, who was named Emma. Both Hardy and Emma find the meeting quite interesting. However, it took about 3 more years for them to become engaged and later marry. Students, I hope you all have got the meaning of this poem and the depth of this also. So guys, read out this poem, find out the meaning of the tough words and interpret the whole meaning. Till then, take care of yourself. We will meet in our next session. Till then, goodbye.